Bonjour tout le monde. Good morning, everyone. This is a truly historic week as Canada hosts grassroots leaders and advocates from around the world at the Women Deliver Global Conference here in Vancouver. Our government promised to put gender equality at the heart of everything we do, and this summit is another chance to keep creating meaningful progress on women's empowerment. Globally and here at home, we're seeing a pushback against women's rights, whether it's attacks on a woman's fundamental right to choose or violence against Indigenous women and girls. The moment for Canadian leadership is now, and we're stepping up. But there is no silver bullet on gender equality. We need to take action on a whole range of issues if we're going to change the status quo. This week, our government is announcing new steps forward on everything from funding for women's organizations and women's health to support for entrepreneurs and members of LGBTQ2 communities. Dimanche dernier, la ministre Monsef a annoncé des nouveaux partenariats de financement de contrepartie pour les organismes canadiens menés par des femmes. La ministre a aussi annoncé que notre gouvernement compte investir dans le Fonds pour l'égalité pour faire avancer l'égalité des sexes. On a déjà réalisé des progrès importants à cet égard, que ce soit avec notre stratégie pour mettre fin à la violence fondée sur le sexe ou avec notre loi sur l'équité salariale. Yesterday marked another important and long overdue step towards justice for Indigenous women in Canada. The National Inquiry into Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women and Girls formally presented their final report on Monday, in which they found that the tragic violence against Indigenous women and girls amounts to genocide. Our government will work with Indigenous partners on real and meaningful action as we review the inquiry's calls for justice. Of course, as Canadians, we know that we cannot turn inwards and ignore the struggles of women beyond our borders. Just a few minutes ago, I announced that Canada will increase our investment to $1.4 billion annually to support women and girls' health globally, positioning us as a leading donor worldwide on comprehensive sexual and reproductive health rights. L'annonce d'aujourd'hui témoigne de notre engagement à investir dans la santé sexuelle et reproductive des femmes et dans la santé des mères et des nouveau-nés et des enfants. Certains politiciens pensent qu'on ne peut pas faire tout ça en même temps, mais notre gouvernement est heureux de démontrer le contraire. Over the next few days, we'll be announcing what else our government is doing to advance gender equality and make a real difference in people's lives, from entrepreneurs across the country to women right here in Vancouver. Again, I want to thank everyone who has come to Women Deliver to share their expertise and their ideas. Our government will always be a strong voice and a steadfast ally as we build a brighter future, not just for women and girls, but for everyone. I'm happy to take questions from media now.
Prime Minister over here, Laura Lynch with the CBC, and for the sake of efficiency, I wonder if you could answer the following questions in English and French. With regard to what you say will be meaningful action on the inquiry into missing and murdered Indigenous women, one of the calls is for an independent task force to review and reinvestigate cases of missing Indigenous women, some of whom have been missing for decades, for the sake of the families. I'm wondering if you'll fund that. And just, I'm going to sneak in a second question here. President Trump today reiterated his commitment to slap tariffs on Mexico, and I'm wondering what that means to the incipient free trade agreement. Thank you.
Thank you. First of all, the tragedy that has been ongoing for decades and generations in Canada of Indigenous women and girls going missing, being murdered, and the Canadian system not responding as if it's a priority or even a concern is something that has to end. The tragedy, the impact on families, families that I saw yesterday, is undescribable, and we cannot pretend to be a country that cares about human rights, that has a positive impact on the world, if we do not end this situation once and for all. That's why we accepted the recommendations of the calls to action by the Truth and Reconciliation Commission that asked for a national public inquiry into the missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls, and we acted on it. We accept the calls to justice of the inquiry and will move forward in partnership with Indigenous peoples on taking action across the broad range of calls to action. We will be putting forward our action plan in the coming months that will outline how we as a government will respond to this, this report and this Commission's calls to actions. And I look forward to doing that with you all in the coming months. La tragédie qui dure depuis des décennies, des générations sur les femmes et les filles autochtones disparues et assassinées doit cesser. C'est une tragédie qui empêche le Canada d'être un pays, le pays que nous aimons imaginer être, un pays qui défend les droits, un pays de justice et d'opportunité. C'est pourquoi nous acceptons les trouvailles de l'enquête de la Commission et nous allons travailler avec les peuples autochtones pour établir notre plan d'action qu'on va partager d'ici quelques mois pour comment on va avancer pour mettre fin à ce fléau qui nous afflige en tant que pays. On the issue of the ratification of NAFTA, we will continue to move forward in a thoughtful, responsible way because we know that the new NAFTA agreement is good for jobs in Canada, in the United States, and in Mexico. We will go through our process in a way that looks to keep pace with and support the American ratification process where there is a slightly greater degree of debate than in Canada. And we accept the statements by Mexican leadership that this will not affect their ratification process, the threats that President Trump has made. Nous allons continuer notre processus de ratification au Canada en ligne avec les États-Unis et nous acceptons ce que le président mexicain a dit, que cette menace par les Américains, par le président Trump, ne ralentira leur processus de ratification de l'ALENA.
Également, je serai au Canada, comme ma collègue, si c'est possible de répondre en français et en anglais. Tout d'abord, les auteurs du rapport de l'enquête nationale sur les femmes portées disparues parlent d'un génocide. Est-ce que vous considérez que c'est un génocide?
Nous reconnaissons que c'est une situation qui dure depuis des années, des décennies, des générations au Canada. Et tous les Canadiens savent que nous devons arrêter cette tragédie qu'est la disparition de femmes et filles autochtones et assassinées. Nous avons lancé une enquête où les commissaires devaient déceler la vérité et faire des recommandations. Les commissaires ont conclu que c'était un génocide et nous acceptons ce qu'ils ont trouvé. Mais notre emphase, évidemment, doit être pas sur un débat sur les mots, mais sur les actions concrètes que nous allons prendre en tant que pays pour mettre fin à cette situation. Et je comprends qu'il y a eu beaucoup d'attention sur ce rapport et c'est une bonne chose, mais je sais aussi que les Canadiens sont unis dans vouloir voir une fin à cette situation qui dure depuis trop longtemps. We recognize the need for a national public inquiry into missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls, and we have commissioners who came back with findings of fact and with calls to action. We thank them for their work, we applaud their work, and we accept their findings, including that what happened amounts to genocide. There are many debates ongoing around words and use of words. Our focus as a country, as leaders, as citizens, must be on the steps we take to put an end to this situation. And that is what we are going to remain focused on.
Et puis, M. Trudeau, vous avez pressenti un ancien ministre péquiste, Régent Hébert, comme candidat pour la prochaine élection. M. Hébert semble très intéressé par votre offre. Qu'est-ce que ça vous dit sur l'état du mouvement souverainiste au Québec?
Je pense que ce que j'ai vu au Québec depuis plusieurs années, c'est une compréhension que les enjeux les plus importants pour les familles, les citoyens, sont le travail, les opportunités, la santé, l'éducation, l'environnement, et la préoccupation sur les structures politiques où l'indépendance n'est plus un élément aussi central du débat politique québécois. Ça ne veut pas dire qu'il n'y a pas beaucoup de gens qui tiennent encore passionnément à cette idée-là. Il y en a. Mais il y a, même ces gens-là savent souvent que le travail qu'on est en train de faire ensemble pour aider les familles continuera, quel que soit le système politique dans lequel on se trouve. Alors, je trouve que il y a beaucoup de gens qui sont prêts à travailler avec nous pour livrer pour les Québécois, pour les Canadiens. Et je suis heureux de voir beaucoup de gens passer au-delà des débats divisifs du passé pour parler de comment nous allons travailler ensemble pour bâtir un meilleur avenir pour nos enfants. I think one of the things we've seen over the past few years is that the intensity of debate around Quebec independence has reduced or taken somewhat of a backseat to important debates about the environment, about growing an economy that works for everyone, about Canada's standing in the world. And although there continue to be people who strongly and passionately believe in an independence option for Quebec, many of those people continue to work very hard alongside us on creating better opportunities for everyone, challenges that will remain regardless of the political system in which we find ourselves. So I am encouraged to see so many people focused on how we can work together to build a better future for everyone, rather than focusing on the divisive debates of the past.
Tansei, and good morning, Mr. Prime Minister. My name is
Tansei.
Tina House with the Aboriginal People's Television Network. You cited in the final conclusion of the report yesterday on the Murdered and Missing Women National Inquiry that it was genocide. Do you believe that it was genocide, Mr. Prime Minister?
I think one of the challenges we face right now is a lot of people are engaging in debate over words. As I've said, we accept the findings of the commissioners that it was genocide. But our focus is going to be, as it must be, on the families, on the communities that have suffered such loss, on the systems that have repeatedly failed Indigenous women and girls across this country. Our focus is on bringing together people to solve this challenge, and that's what we will remain focused on.
Yesterday, many of the families that we spoke with said that it was important for them to hear the acknowledgement coming from you. Is that a yes or no? Do you believe it was genocide?
I have acknowledged that I accept the findings of the report. And the issue that we have is that people are getting wrapped up in debates over a very important and powerful term. And our focus, as I said, we accept those findings. We accept the finding that this was genocide. And we will move forward to end this ongoing national tragedy.
Thank you for your time.
One of the important parts of being a feminist is being able to reflect on your work as a feminist. So for you, using a specific example, where have you come short as a feminist prime minister? And what's the next step in Venezuela in terms of supporting women, given that the operations of the embassy have been closed?
I think absolutely the reflection on being a feminist is always trying to look for where we do better. I mean, one of the things that was a surprise and dismaying to me, even as we were moving forward with a gender-balanced cabinet, for example, with a strong feminist international development agenda, as we're moving forward in so many ways to close gaps, recognizing when a report came out a couple of years ago that Canada is way down the list on pay equity. That despite the work that we've been doing over the past few years, Canada is not a global leader when it comes to making sure that women and men get paid the same amounts for work of equal value. That's why we've moved forward in introducing proactive pay equity legislation, but we know that's going to take time, and there's always more to do. I will continue to reflect on where our shortcomings are and where we can do better, and that's something that is really important. On the matter of Venezuela, we continue to be extremely concerned about the deteriorating human rights situation and the distancing from democracy that continues under the Maduro regime. That's why we support the interim presidency of Juan Guaido, who is recognized under the Venezuelan constitution as the interim president who is charged with holding new elections as soon as possible. We continue to work with our partners in the region as a member of the Lima Group and continue to advocate for transition to democracy so that we can restore opportunities and peace and stability to the Venezuelan people. In regards to the embassy, we are dismayed by the obligation to close the Canadian embassy, but the Maduro regime was not renewing the visas of the Canadian diplomats there. We recalled the ambassador some time ago. But we will continue to work with international organizations, with NGOs, with our allies to try and make sure we are fighting for safety and opportunity for people in Venezuela, particularly women. But we will not get to a good place until Venezuela has a transition out of this murderous dictatorial regime of Nicolas Maduro.
Hi, Canadian Press. The inquiry made 231 recommendations that they all said were all essential. Which ones do you see as most doable in the immediate future? And a second question, Mike Pompeo has had some sharp words for China on the anniversary of Tiananmen Square. Excuse me. Canada hasn't said anything on the subject. What's your view on the incident's place in history?
First of all, we recognize all calls to action are important, and calls for justice are important, and we will work with Indigenous communities and leadership on establishing our plan to move forward and to respond to them in partnership with Indigenous peoples. We will be establishing that plan in the coming weeks, and we will have more to say once we've figured out ourselves what path forward is right for Canadians, again, and do that with Indigenous peoples. In regards to China, I know Foreign Minister Chrystia Freeland will be putting out a statement shortly, if it's not already out, marking the 30th anniversary of the Tiananmen Square massacre. We continue to call on China to respect human rights, to respect the right to protest, to respect freedom of expression, to cease its actions against minorities like the Uyghurs in Western China. We have real concerns about China's behavior in regards to human rights, and will continue to advocate both directly with Chinese leadership, as I have every time I have sat down with them, and indirectly with our allies, call for better respect of human rights on this anniversary and every day going forward. Je sais que la ministre Freeland va émettre un communiqué formel d'ici très peu au sujet de ce 30e anniversaire du massacre à Tiananmen Square. mais nous allons continuer de mettre de la pression sur la Chine, de respecter les droits de la personne, de respecter le droit de manifester, les droits de liberté d'expression, de liberté de religion. Nous déplorons les actions que la Chine est en train de prendre contre la minorité ouïghour. Nous sommes en train de déplorer la détention arbitraire de Canadiens et d'autres prisonniers politiques en Chine. Et nous avons dit ça directement au leadership chinois, nous avons dit ça directement indirectement avec nos alliés, et nous allons continuer de se tenir fort pour les droits de la personne en Chine et partout dans le monde.
Dernière question.
Suleiman Hossin, BBC Newsround. You tweeted recently about your concerns that 1 in 5 children around the world are not in education. Why is this, and what are you doing here in Canada? What are you doing about it here in Canada? I also want to know what you think about kids taking time off school to protest about climate crisis.
Okay. Thank you for your question. The education of children around the world is a huge priority, particularly the education of women and girls. That's why we made it a central element of our G7 presidency last year. We convened a group of experts, the G7 Gender Advisory Council, that made recommendations to us on how, as a global community, Canada could lead. We could lead as a G7 on some of the most pressing issues. One of the things that was pointed out was that there's money out there for girls' education, but there was a lack in funding girls' education in crisis or conflict situations. That's one of the first things that disappeared. So working with our allies and our partners and the World Bank, we collected close to $4 billion directly for women and for girls' education in conflict and crisis situations around the world. That is making a huge difference already and will continue to, because we know that when we ensure education for women and girls, we create opportunities for entire communities. We create peace and stability. It is a fundamental building block of not just a better society, but indeed a better world. And we're going to continue to do that. But of course, one of the announcements that we made today highlights that we understand that before we can even talk about girls' education, we have to talk about sexual reproductive health rights. We need to talk about maternal, newborn child health. And those are the things that Canada is stepping up. While other countries are stepping back on their investments and playing politics with it, Canada is stepping up. We understand that investing in maternal, newborn, and child health and in reproductive health rights and services are essential to moving forward in a holistic way that respects women and empowers them to build a better future for themselves, their kids, their family, their community. That's why we're going to continue to be investing in Canada and around the world on respecting women's rights, even as others step away from it. On climate, Canadians recognize the impact of climate change to a greater degree than we ever have. The wildfires going on right now in northern Alberta, the wildfire season that's upon us that we've seen here in BC over 2 very difficult years. The floods we saw across the country this spring, like past springs. We are seeing an increase in droughts, an increase in tornadoes in the Ottawa area just a couple of days ago, increased hurricanes in our southern neighbors. Extreme weather events are extraordinarily expensive for Canadians, for their communities, for our economy. We need to be taking real action to prevent climate change. That's why we're moving forward on a price on pollution right across the country, despite the fact that conservative politicians are trying to push back against that. We will continue to move forward on fighting climate change. We're moving forward on protecting our marine areas and land-based areas to meet and surpass our global targets. We're moving forward on historic Oceans Protection Plan, which involved investments in the Canadian Coast Guard, historic investments in renewal of the fleet that I made just a few weeks ago here in Vancouver. We're going to continue to move forward towards the economy of the future as we invest in renewable resources, invest in new technology, encourage the way we develop and use our natural resources to be cleaner and more responsible and safer, in a way that makes sure at the center of everything, this transition towards a cleaner economy is affordable for regular Canadians. We know that the extreme weather events coming are unaffordable for Canadians and for our society. That's why we need to act. But we need to act in a way that puts more money in the pockets of Canadians, and that's exactly what we're doing with the climate incentive, with the support we're giving to families in places where Conservative politicians are not moving forward on putting a price on pollution. We will do that in a way that makes it affordable for Canadians. Merci beaucoup tout le monde. Thank you very much. Merci.